Is the real best team heading into the next ACC football season a team we might be overlooking?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch each and every day. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. We are Locked On ACC. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So, Kenton, before we get into the real best team in the ACC, a couple of transfer portal notes on running backs, a potential outgoing from the ACC and a potential incoming. We talked a lot on yesterday's episode, Kenton, about Peny Boone, who was in Louisville for little under 4 months, 3.5 months. He's already taken himself back into the transfer portal, had transferred from Toledo to Louisville. He's back in the portal. It looks like the Tennessee Volunteers are a team that's going to go all in for Peny Boone. Pete Nakos from On3 reported that today, that I think Tennessee is kind of zoning in their running back search right now on Boone. So it's a pity that, with him leaving Louisville, it looks like he's also leaving the ACC.
Yeah, that looks to definitely be the possibility there. But we're going to continue in the notes here, because we could be picking up an equal, if not better, back in terms of the ACC as a whole, with some other action that's on the brink here. But it is sad to see Peny Boone go, especially, you know me. I'm a Detroiter. He's a Detroit guy. Love seeing more Detroiters in the ACC territory. It's always a fun time for me having those types of connections here. But it is one of those moments that, again, like we talked about yesterday, it leaves you wondering what's going on. But at the end of the day, we don't care about the labor pain. Show us the baby. And the reality is, it seems to be that he will be producing that baby outside of the ACC.
Yeah, and so Tennessee, what they're up to kind of relates to the other running back we're going to talk about, because the Volunteers, they were one of the suitors for Damien Martinez, excellent running back out of Oregon State, almost 1,200 yards this past season, 9 rushing touchdowns, a real workhorse. He had an official visit scheduled with Tennessee, but they have now dropped off of his official visit list. I can tell you from everything I'm hearing, Miami is going all in on this one, and they really want to become the favorite for Damien Martinez. He's going to take 4 visits, though, this month. He's going to be at Arizona today and tomorrow, the 18th through the 19th. He's going to be at Mississippi State, 19th, 20th, and 21st of April. Kentucky, 23rd, 24th, and 25th of April. He's going to end his tour in Miami, 26th, 27th, and 28th. But the other part of that is, Kenton, before he starts taking those visits, Miami and Mario Cristobal just went in home with Damien Martinez. So they're maybe trying to see if he can scratch some of those stops off of his list here and try to get something closed before then.
Let me tell you something. Damien Martinez is a back who watching him play, he's a throwback. He's a renaissance back. He's not really what you think of in terms of today's running backs, where you're looking at guys that are a little smaller and a lot more capable out of the backfield as a receiver. And that's not a slight against him. He is capable as a wide receiver. He's just not a guy that you would split out full time the way you would some of these scat backs, the way you would Alvin Kamara, guys, Christian McCaffrey, guys of that ilk. But I'll tell you what, he is a guy that when you put that ball in his hand, when it's under that right arm or that left armpit, he's dangerous. He's physical. He has great contact balance. His vision and burst are the 2 things that I look at and I say, this is what could potentially make him exceptional. Because for a guy his size, I believe he's about 215 or so. And for a guy that's his
30.
size, 230, I'm sorry. That's for a guy his size, the ability to make some of the jump cuts that he does. And he doesn't just hit holes and it's like, when he gets going, it's dangerous. No. Right away, if you leave a hole open, he will find it. And he may be 230, but he'll shuffle those puppies in a way that will get you thinking he's only 210, 215, and he'll be Katie Diggs at the doorstep. He's going from there. So if I was Mario and them, I would be trying to get him to cross folks off too, okay? I'd be wanting him to cross everybody off except us, because that is a bad, bad man. And I'll tell you what, I was surprised that he did not hop in the portal when the coach from Oregon State left, and kind of with the situation that Oregon State was left in conference-wise. I was surprised that it took this long, but whoever gets him is getting a special one. And I mean that from a very genuine standpoint. He's a throwback. How many backs can you say, I'm comfortable with him having 20 carries a game in today's
very few these days. Yeah, maybe Amari and Hampton at North Carolina. It's a short list.
And would you agree with me that he is one of those guys that you're like, if we give him the ball 20 carries a game, that does not mean that we're devoid of talent at running back. He's just that good.
Yeah, one of the big things that stands out about him, a couple of things, you're talking about durability. I think that's a huge factor. Mario Cristobal also likes big, powerful running backs. That just kind of jives well with his philosophy. And in the case of Damien Martinez, he's someone who seems to get stronger as games go on. So, if he were to come to Miami, he wouldn't get as much of a workload, I don't think, as what he was getting at Oregon State. He may look at that as a positive from what I understand, because a little less wear and tear on the body before you hopefully start an NFL career in a couple of years. So it's something to watch out for. And I've talked about it a lot on this channel and on Locked On Canes. And I was on with Spencer the other day on Locked On College Football. Cam Ward is so well liked now internally at Miami. I think he's exceeded the expectations of their coaches. They really feel urgency to try to surround him with as much talent as possible, because Ward's only going to be in Miami for 1 year. They really want to maximize that year. So this is a cool quote that I came across from Mark Packer of ACC Network. I enjoy his content, and he was asked who he thinks the best team is in the ACC right now heading into the next football season. And a lot of folks would expect him to say Florida State, maybe Clemson, maybe even Miami with the talent they're compiling. But he went all in on the Wolfpack. He said, I'm going to give you a bizarro one here. Again, I'm allowed to change my mind. He said, I'm going to go NC State. First time since 1979, he said. There's more than a chance. I love what Dave Doran has done in the offseason. I think they've got more offensive weapons. In fact, after watching their spring game, I know they do. I'm still concerned about linebacker. That's my concern as well. Peyton Wilson's absence, who takes up for the guy being in the right place at the right time every time. But I just trust defensive coordinator Tony Gibson will come up with the scheme. And I like State's schedule, he said. And honestly, Kenton, when people are handicapping who's going to be in the ACC championship game, I don't think people look at schedules enough, because certain teams are kind of lucking out in the way those things shake out.
Oh, absolutely. NC State schedule, let's make no bones about it, it's marshmallow soft. It's one of those schedules that, if you like a tough, firm pillow, you couldn't sleep on that thing properly, or you think you're sinking into your bed. The reality here is this. You and I both agree. The linebacking core, it does feel like a bizarre world thing for a lot of reasons. Number one, NC State being a favorite. When has that ever been a thing in terms of football? And then you move forward to NC State is known as a big producer of linebackers. Some of the best linebackers that have come out of the ACC in recent years, especially under Gibson. We were looking at all of the highest producing linebackers in the ACC. They always come out of his system. And now you're looking at a situation where you're saying to yourself, what's going on with that linebacker position? The defensive line seems shored up. You've got playmakers there. You've got playmakers in Davin Van. You got Hibbler. You got the nose guard, who his name is eluding me right now, but he's a dynamic from that zero position, getting penetration up the field. He's a very special guy. Brandon Cleveland, that's the name I'm thinking of. Secondary, you've got a corner in Aiden White who has not allowed a touchdown in a very long time. Very long time. To me, he is the most underrated defender in all of college football, and it's not particularly close, because any other corner from any other school, if you put him on Miami and he doesn't allow a touchdown for 2 years, everybody is screaming, oh, this kid, he's going to be the #1 pick in the draft next year. You put him at Oklahoma and he does it. You put him at Texas. You put him at Bama and he does it. For whatever reason, he's not getting that same love. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. So you go from there, and then you say, well, offensively, they finally look like weapons galore. And again, the quarterback who gets it to you on time and on target. I see the vision. I really do see the vision. The quest for NC State is, how do you go from being the hunted the hunter to the hunted? Because the reality is, if NC State plays its best game, plays its best football, near its best football, its highest clip. In all of their games this year, there will be maybe 2 games where they're not favored, and one of them is not a conference game against Tennessee. So you're looking at a situation where you have the path is there to get to Charlotte. It is about, can NC State execute and not piss down their leg?
Yeah, so maybe that's a team that people should be giving more attention to out of the usual suspects, with most people picking Florida State heading into next season. Now, you may have noticed a trend so far in this transfer portal period. You've got players who are, picking their third or even in some cases fourth team they've played for in college. You also have players who are transferring away from schools that they just transferred to back in January. Now, the NCAA is finally adapting their rules to reflect this new reality. We'll talk about it right here on our brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Keep it locked. And I know you're keeping it locked to Yahoo Finance, my friends. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. Now, you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analysis ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear what the local experts on Locked On, who they're picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft, available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. This is Locked On ACC. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes alongside Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. So I like, Kenton, how the NCAA, their Division I council, is announcing these rule changes as if this stuff was their idea. I mean, in reality, they've been getting their butts whooped in court, antitrust cases. But the Division I council today announced the council is changing their transfer rules. They permit immediate eligibility for transfers who are academically eligible or in good standing at previous school and meet progress toward degree requirements at new school. And what this means is basically unlimited transferring for athletes as long as they meet academic requirements, which are, I'm sure, different at every school, what those requirements are. So, the NCAA realized we can't really stop people from transferring as much as they want. So now we're going to make it official. This was our idea all along, guys. And they're also, Kenton, changing their official rules on NIL. The D1 Council rules allowing schools, they now allow schools to assist student athletes with NIL opportunities if those student athletes disclose NIL activities valuing $600 plus to their schools. So let's get to that second. Let's talk about the transfer rules first. So we kind of already knew this was a thing. Now it's officially a thing.
Donno, you're a married man, so you probably understand this well. This is like when a man says, I wear the pants in a relationship. My wife just picks the color, the cut, where we get them altered at, and all that type of stuff. But I wear the pants. I wear the pants. It's that type of deal where, the NCAA is very much so getting the wheels whooped off it in court. It's getting its teeth taken from it to enforce anything. And even if the NCAA were to say, hey, I disagree with this strongly. Okay, sure, disagree with it as strongly as you want. What are you going to do about it? Come on, let us know quickly. I'm waiting. Exactly, nothing. So this is a situation where the NCAA is trying to save a little bit of face, if at all possible. At this point, I don't think it is because of how badly they've been devastated in court. And so from here, I think the next thing that we're kind of looking at with these rules are just sort of playing catch up and saying, you know what, fine. Since we're already behind, we'll just allow that which already exists and maybe try to add in some parameters and guardrails for there to be a successful situation in what already exists. But even that, I would say, would be giving the NCAA too much credit, because in this, I've read over this multiple times. I don't even see any additional guardrails. It literally feels like they're just saying, no, do everything you're already doing. Yeah. Great job, kids. It's like they came home in the middle of Project X and were like, well, this is some party you threw, son. Have fun for the rest of the weekend, and left.
Yeah, yeah. So, and here, the NIL part of it, there's a lot I want to unpack on this as well. So moving forward, school, because in the first kind of version of NIL, schools had to completely stay out of it, right? That it's, you know, we're not going to even look at what's going on. This is all between third parties and players. Now schools can get involved. They can identify NIL opportunities and facilitate deals between student athletes and third parties. So again, this is not schools directly paying players, but they can facilitate deals with third parties. That's an important distinction. They can provide a reasonable grace period to student athletes who do not report NIL information within 30 days. But they also note, as the Division I Council, the existing rules against pay for play and schools compensating student athletes directly for NIL, those remain in place. But schools can now facilitate. Now, Kenton, like, some people may look at that and say, this is like a further loss of control, and now this makes schools, they can start dropping bags. That's not what this is.
No.
To me, this is an important safeguard, because the way that it's operated for, you know, the first few years of NIL, schools in some cases have gotten burned by third-party NIL collectives who make promises they can't keep. And so now I think this, at least it allows schools to get involved and maybe regulate to make sure, hey, is this on the level? Like, are you promising this guy 7 figures when you can't deliver 6 figures? Like, I think it's actually important to have schools involved here.
Yeah, in the words of Migos, RIP to Nate Dogg, I had to regulate, because there needs to be some type of safeguards put in by the schools in and of themselves. And I think that is, you know, I was always taught that the more hands get involved in something, the more room for error you have. And it seems to me that in this moment, if we are taking out that kind of, hey, so the player needs an agent and the third party needs an agent, and the school needs to stay out of it. So we just need the player's agent, the third party's agent, anything else that may need to be represented in there, and potentially somebody to make sure everything is above board with the NCAA that's not related to either party. It's so much going on. It's so much going on. And now you can have schools come up with a branch of their school directly to say, we will do everything we can to keep you eligible. We will get you paid and keep you eligible all at once. And we'll make sure that you don't end up on ESPN. Hey, Damien Martinez has to pay back $300 to the One Beaver Collective because, you know, thing X, Y, and Z before he leaves Oregon State. Or, hey, you know, Grayson McCall ends up having to pay back $1,000 into the Wolfpack NIL collect. You know, you just don't want to see that. You never want to see that because, again, it shows that there were lots of hands in this thing. And like you just said, the biggest pitfall, the coach talks to the person who's the head of the collective, and those two need to be in the same page and everything going, as opposed to now, again, you have a dedicated person who it's their job to facilitate this. It is their 24/7. They live, sleep, eat, and breathe. Hey, coach, the NIL numbers look like this at the moment. If you want to go after this player, you're going to need another raise. Hey, you know, I'm asking on behalf of the coach, how much money do we have to throw at this kid here? Because we want them. They've reached out to us and said that they want to be here. What can we do for them? What type of package can we put together? And give me a few alternatives, as opposed to, again, just having some rogue individuals potentially acting on their own behalf as third parties negotiating things out here.
Now, I know we still have the current conference system in place. We've talked on this show in the past about the Super League proposal, which would basically take the NCAA out of the equation in football, and it would blow up the traditional conference structure and create this 80-team Super League. Now, I speculated yesterday on what the Super League transfer rules might look like. I've gotten more information on it now because part of their pitch that wasn't public has recently been made public. And so I want to talk about how different that would look. And crazy enough, the Super League transfer rules would actually be more restrictive than what the NCAA currently has in place because it would be collectively bargained. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. Keep it locked right here. Alex Donno and Kenton Gibbs with you on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Guys, I'm having so much fun with this app. Monopoly Go. My friends, if you've got that competitive side like I do, your competitive side is going to be a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I could charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. I hope it's me. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alex Donno alongside Kenton Gibbs. So Kenton, the Sportico recently obtained a quote-unquote confidential pitch deck, which was circulated by the Super League group in mid-February. And I was looking through this today because it does have some details that I wasn't aware of prior. And again, we believe that at some point, college football is going to have to evolve away from the NCAA and to the Super League model, where the big difference is there would be a union representing players. There would be a collective bargaining agreement that's somewhat similar to what you have in the NFL and other professional leagues, since college football has basically become a professional sport at this point. One thing that I wasn't aware of was what the transfer policy would look like in the Super League, because I had speculated about possible trades like in the NFL. There's no trades, Kenton, in the Super League, just so people know.
Of course.
So they write teams would be allowed 85 roster spots each year, but could only have a maximum of 70 scholarship slots. At least 50 of those would have to go to players who were recruited by the program directly out of high school. Athletes would be allowed to transfer twice within a 5-year eligibility window. Each year, there would be 2 transfer portal windows, an open one in February and a supplemental one in March, and schools would only be able to sign a maximum of 10 players during each. So there's more restriction there than whatever the NCAA can do. Almost too much, Kenton, because your roster has to be made up 50 out of 70 scholarship spots with players you organically recruited out of high school. Players can only transfer twice in 5 years. If we see evolution to this Super League pitch, I think they might have to open that up a bit.
Well, and this is why I'm glad that the Super League pitch does include collective bargaining, because there does need to be that aspect of, this is your first offer to the players. This is your first offer to the universities, because there needs to be some tweaking and adjusting here, because it needs to account for special situations. It just has to, right? Like, let's just be honest. We can all sit here and say every player that transfers a bunch of times, 2-3 times, is a derelict and they're the problem and they weren't in 2 to 3 bad situations. But how many times have we seen coaches, hey, this coach is on year 6, they haven't been productive, they get fired. That's after your true freshman year. You go somewhere else. That coach gets fired 2 years later. You go, then what? You're stuck at that school for forever with a new coach who may not want you, who may be recruiting over you, who may say, hey, you're a drop back pro style quarterback. We run spread here. Our quarterback has to be able to use his legs and make something happen. And, that's just a quarterback position. There are so many other positions where you could objectively not be a great fit for a team's system one way or the other. And if that's your second transfer, tough titty said the kitty when the milk went dry is in essence what they're saying. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. So I do think we've gotten a little too loosey-goosey with the transfers. I agree to that. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I do think we have a few too many windows, because if I understand this correctly, there are at minimum 3 windows right now for transfers, which I feel like A little bit much. A little, let's make this transfer thing mean a little more than that. But I don't think that we need to go and do a complete 180 on this thing. Maybe let's do a 90. Let's do a 40-degree turn. Let's try 130. Let's see how it feels before we decide to go full like, hey, we're going hard line the other way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And huge shout out to everyone who made Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure to support our channel. Smash that like button. Subscribe to Locked On ACC, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio pods. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We'll talk more transfer portal tomorrow because maybe we'll have more clarity on some of these running backs, some of these other players leaving and arriving in the ACC. Until then, we'll talk next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.